Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to Step Back Tonight, the show I do on Tuesday nights. And you can watch my hair going. I'm increasingly turning into Wolverine, because not only do I have hair that sticks straight up, but I'm wearing headphones, which sort of tweak it a little bit. And I play with my hair in a little bit of a way, and I'm balding in such a fashion that it's like growing out, and I'm like getting like a Wolverine hair thing. Hi, my name is Tristan Johnson, and I am the host of the YouTube channels Step Back History and Tristan Won't Shut Up, and I stream here on the website that you are on 3 times a week. I stream on Mondays from 12 to 2, which is a show called The Monday Discourse, where we talk about stuff that happens on the internet with my permanent co-host, Mia Mulder. I then stream on Tuesday nights, do this night show you're watching right now from 7 to 9, and it's called Step Back Tonight. It's an evening show, prime time, get to hang out with y'all. Cheers. And then I do the Reactor on Fridays, which is a stream where I react to things that people send me. And I have to mention, because it's very, very exciting, that on Friday, my stream on Friday is going to be on my birthday. And this birthday has not a whole lot of things to be excited about. 32 is not exactly a great birthday, and COVID hasn't really made it so I can't do anything fun. So I hope that we can have a really fun, birthday party stream on Friday. So I hope that we all have a good time with that. You all come out and we have a good time watching stuff together. Other than that, I go by he, him pronouns, and if you want to see my work, you can go to stepbackhistory.com or tristanwon'tshutup.com. If you are on Twitch and you have Amazon Prime, I would recommend to you that you use the free Twitch Prime subscription you have every month. If you don't use it, the Amazon gets to keep your money and feed it to the impossible to satiate maw of Jeff Bezos, where he just eats the money whole. And you don't want to see that happen. You don't want that to happen to perfectly good money. So please use it to support an independent Twitch creator. If you choose me, I'd be very grateful. But still, do support somebody that you believe in nonetheless. And if you want to find out about my new content, I have my latest video on Step Back is about the militia movement. That came out last week. And it's getting a very good reception. It's gotten 10,000 views in its first week, which is pretty good for Step Back. It's doing very well. There should be a new Step Back video coming out tomorrow. Tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. So be excited for that. It's already. I think that people are going to like it a lot. I have titled it. Let me see if I can remember or dig up what I titled it. Pew pew. It's called "When White Supremacists Declared War on America." So take that as you will. And yeah, that comes out tomorrow. And then after that, I'm going to work on my Japanese economic recovery video and hopefully make that sound a lot more interesting than I just made it sound now. And on Tristan Won't Shut Up, my latest video was a 2020 election rundown. That video is not doing very well, but that's fine. But my next video on that channel, which I'm hoping will be coming out on Thursday, I shot it today, so I'll be editing it tomorrow, and hopefully it'll come out on Thursday. And that is going to be about Amazon and about the technological marvel that is the sort of logistics system that Amazon uses to do stuff. And I'm going to use it. So that's the thing. That's the thing I'm going to do. And that'll, inshallah will come out on Thursday. And then I don't know what's going on after that. I have to think about what I'm going to do after that. Because technically, if I need to make another video to be successful, I might do something on index funds and how index funds are sort of like an AI that literally undermines free market capitalism by showing that cooperation is way more successful. Anyways, Another thing that I want to mention to everybody, because this is a new policy, so I'm going to be mentioning this for at least until next Friday, is that I'm going to put a link in the chat, and what's going to happen is I decided that in order to keep up to date with the chat, I'm going to stop just taking my questions directly from the chat, or at least I'm not going to, like, you know, if you ask a question in the chat, there's no guarantee that I'm going to read it or that I'm going to answer it, unless it's like something that I can answer like in like a sentence. But like, for stuff like if you want to help like kind of figure out what kinds of things we're going to talk about, I've got all of these saved up, and I can already see responses are coming in. So yeah, I'll go digging through it. I can't promise you when I'll get to it or if I'll get to it this stream, which is very unlikely. There's already about 30 questions in the pot, but it is a thing that you can check out if you want me to get to your question. If I absolutely must hear me answer the question eventually, then that's it. And this way I can kind of keep more up to date and interact more with the chat is the hope. The other thing I want to do, last thing I want to do, I swear, I'm sorry I'm taking so long, this is a big winded introduction, but new people, if this is your first time watching a Step Back stream, I would really like you to make yourself known in the chat, because we've got a very active chat community. People have become friends with each other and stuff like that in our chat room, so I would love to have more of you join in and get to know the other people in the group. Yeah, I think that's everything. Whew. That's the whole spiel. I did it. Fucking aced it. Okay. I look like a mad scientist. This is true. Posted a bunch of questions at Google Doc like 20 minutes ago. Did you get them? Probably. I have 30 questions and approximately 56.7% of them are yours. So... yeah. Do we bring the cake? I've got some birthday stuff that I'm gonna bring. So heads up, I got a Zoom call at 8. You'll be a YouTube mod for the back half of the stream. That's fine. I can watch the stream chat now that I'm not gonna be like 30-40 minutes behind on the chat. Been binging your videos. I'm really interested in a lot of the concepts you talk about, but I don't know where to begin. Depends upon what you're interested in. If you have discussion about, if you have a topic you're interested in, I can definitely try to get you started somewhere. Any hints for its content? The white supremacists declared war on America is about the organization of the white power movement in the 1980s and sort of how it recruited and how it funded itself and like that kind of stuff. Did a practice pitch session with someone from the CBC today. Not going to get my show picked up, obviously, but I got decent feedback on my pitch. Well, that's good. Skynet has been real for me. I have a friend who works at the CBC, too. And, yeah, he works in radio, though. Skynet... oh, it's just... the same problem you had with the reactor links. Probably. People... whatever. You have to think about it more as, like, you don't... like, what's it called? Just have questions that need to be answered. Like, think about it more like you're contributing subjects and discussion points for the show, rather than, I have a question and I will not stop annoying you until it is answered. That is, like, what's it called? If you think about it purely through, like, that lens, yeah, it's going to be frustratingly slow. But if you think about it like you're helping contribute to what this stream is about, then hopefully that makes more sense. And I can always just delete questions if they're like, too old to be really relevant anymore. So that's how we'll do. See if anything weird happens in the future. It's up to a few days for a stream, but I forget. Yeah, the submitting questions thing is a bit. I think it's a bit better. I can already see that about 4 of them have rolled in since the stream started. So, or 5, sorry. Guess we should get started. So this is. First, we've got. This is a Mia Mulder answer. First few are for Mia, so. Of non-white culture and things like fantasy. Wait, no, this one is one I can answer. So this is a good one to start with. You find question about the Trump coup in 2023. Oh boy, I don't know if it'll be that bad, but who knows. All right. You what are both of your thoughts? So this person Cybercat does want me to give that to Mia. Okay. That's a Mia question. Mia question. Do you hear about the AfD inviting some far-right German YouTubers to harass MPs during a vote? I have not heard about that. Is the AfD that the German neo-Nazi party? That fucking sucks. I don't know more to say that, like, neo-Nazis are getting more and more popular around the world, and Germany is the most scary, so please no. I would prefer if we did not have that. I answered this one last time. I kind of wish there was a way to say I want both of you to answer. That's sort of like, I guess I should probably reword the question with Mia Mulder. That was sort of what that was supposed to be. So maybe I'll take that. I'm not I'm not like my wife. I'm not an expert in survey design, so I'm gonna I'm gonna actually retitle the question right now. Do you want this question read when Mia Mulder is around as a guest host? Hopefully that will work. That'll fix it. Where does one send the questions to? You can go to stepbackhistory.com/submit question. I will put a link in the chat in 1 second. Okay. Next one comes from Christos Nicolau. Further to the Hiroshima, we talked about Hiroshima on Monday. How do we engage with criminal actions of sides that were undoubtedly on the right side of history, i.e. Allied Soviet war crimes in World War II, or anti-colonial movements doing terrorism or massacres, but without the without falling into Nazi dog whistles or both sides shenanigans? I mean, you just have to, in my mind, when you're going to talk about Allied war crimes, you're going to talk about like the bombing of Dresden or something like that. You just have to remember that you're talking about it in a sense of relative scale. So, like, I think like making a point to not like say that, hey, by the Allies doing war crimes at the Battle of Dresden, that doesn't mean that both sides were equally bad. One was fascist and one was Antifa, and as we all know, Antifa are cool and good. So, what it does mean is that nobody's a hero. History doesn't make heroes. History should be in the opposite of hero making, and I would say that. Unfortunately, there's the historian aspect of you want to be as accurate as possible, but at the same time, you also have to deal with the fact that that history also has a small role to play in our overall myth making and how we sort of understand the past. In terms of how much it matters for our narrative self-concept. And so, that's why, in many ways, trying to make people see your country in a positive light involves you trying to diminish, the horrible things your country did. Like all of the pro-imperialism people. Like, I got a person in my comment section who said that the British history curriculum is left-wing because when it talks about colonization, it talks to indigenous people and doesn't mention a single pro-imperialism British historian. And it's like, fucking what, yo? So, complicated. Alrighty. Ryan asks, do you think Moderna, Pfizer, etc. will be able to patent their vaccines and prevent any other pharmaceuticals from manufacturing specific vaccines? If they do, will it take much longer, and will they be responsible for so much death? So they are going to be able to patent their vaccines. They will be. It will be a thing. But also, what's happened is that every country, or at least all the rich countries, have pre-purchased tons of these vaccines before they're even finished. And so, they're not, like, the hard part is that, it's not going to be evenly distributed. And while many, rich countries are going to give them away for free, developing countries are going to have a harder time getting money. That's why, or getting the money to buy vaccines so that they can, and also do the vaccine program. And that's where things are going to be, really bad. And that's where a lot of people can die, because Moderna and Pfizer will not want to just manufacture as much vaccine as possible to immunize the world, but will be focused on making a huge profit. So that's how it ends up. Because unfortunately, we relied on private corporations to solve this rather than, a public effort. Should we judge non-Western xenophobia in history, for example, Japan's maritime ban/seclusion of the Edo period, as we would for European xenophobia of that time period? Ugh. In many ways, it has a lot to do with how it impacts the world today. Japanese people are, what's it called? Are marginalized in many countries where their sort of diaspora has gone. But at the same time, Japan in the home country can be very, very harsh on immigrants. Especially Filipino and Chinese immigrants, and that's something to be mentioned. But I think when you're talking, you have to think about xenophobia in the context of colonization versus different periods. I think that there's a distinction when your country has colonized half the world and is the reason why so entire continents are impoverished. But you're complaining that some of them have found a way to move to your country for a better life. That rings different than the kind of weird nationalism of the Edo period type stuff. What do you think should we do about the Chinese, Iran, North Korea situation? I don't know what's going on with China, Iran, and North Korea. I would like to ask a question to Mia Mulder, but when you stream, it's in the middle of the night because I'm sleeping. Well, if you submit a question and you ask it tag it for Mia to answer it, I'll answer it during the stream. You could always watch the VOD, I suppose. Didn't they also burn Christians during the Edo period? I actually don't know. I'm not a big Japanese history person. Is the problem. I'm going to be, that's why it's going to take me a couple weeks. My next video after the one that comes out tomorrow the next one's not going to come out until probably December 4th. I think I have December 14th as the date that I'm going to release it. Let me just check real quick. Yeah, December 14th is the tentative date for my next Step Back video after the one that comes out tomorrow, because I have to go and read a lot of books to kind of get myself caught up on Japanese history. I've got a little bit because I have studied post-World War II America and their policy towards Japan, But this video about how Japan went from, you know, World War II to what the hell is the name of the pizza or the Domino's pizza fake pop singer? I can't remember what her name is. But like, how do you go from that stuff? So Hatsune Miku. How do you go from from Hiroshima to Hatsune? That's a good title. From Hiroshima to Hatsune Miku, the story of Japan after World War II. Damn. Okay. Okay. Tristan's not a weeb. He's seen exactly one anime. I have seen a few animes. I just can't really dig my teeth into it. I've watched a decent chunk of Death Note. I watched a little bit of the Attack on Titan. I watched the anime. I watched the anime for Pokemon back in the late 90s, early 2000s when it was really on its thing. Someone told me to write it down, from Hiroshima to Hatsune Miku. Okay. And what else have I seen in the anime? I what's it called? I've never finished it, but I feel like I really want to talk about Gundam Wing. I liked Gundam Wing. It was a good show. I just need to finish it at some point. Gyro Attack on Titan turned out to be alt-right. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. The whole show itself is weird and strange. So, and honestly, it got a little dumb pretty quickly. So, I only lasted so long with that show. But I'm not a person who is always chomping at the bit to find the new animes to watch. So, thoughts on Africa's debt crisis? From Lol Cookie 2. My thought on Africa's debt crisis is, maybe the Western white countries should return all of the money they stole from them. Feel like that's a debt the debt crisis in my mind is that Europeans have stolen tons and tons and tons of wealth from Africa that they haven't paid back, and at some point they really should pay it back with interest. All right. Next question I got here is from Jiffy Chips, asking, how do you go about researching and writing scripts? What about Greeks? Yeah. I don't even know what happened to their debt crisis. There was that debt crisis. There was that whole Grexit talk. Remember when Grexit was the word that we knew that ended with exit? Remember when that was the word? Jeez. Anyways, how do I research and write videos is a good question. What I'm doing is sort of in flux right now, but at the moment, I choose the videos I'm going to do based on some mathematics that I've been taking about sort of how videos are performing. Basically, I look at my videos that are how they're performing. I collect this all in an Excel file. And what happened is there's this form, I check for something for how well a video is doing for watch through rates, so how many people who watch it actually finish the video. And I also watch for I watch to see what videos have a lot of traffic from the algorithm, specifically the algorithm that is trying to match people with videos based on, because there's there's a few main types of views, but two types of algorithmic views. One is called browse features, which is sort of tailored to the person. Browse features is views you get from your subscription feed, views you get from Up Next, views you get from the homepage, those kinds of things. And then there's suggested videos. And suggested videos is typically based on things that are related to the videos. So it's like the sidebar on a video, for example. And I find that the suggested videos, the most popular videos under suggested videos are just videos that people are watching from another, topic, which works to some extent. But I find that what I'm trying to do anyway is at a 2-to-1 ratio, make videos that are me trying to capitalize on another one of my videos that's already doing very well. Usually whatever's at the top of my browse features based and how many estimated finished views were from browse features. It's an Excel sheet. It's complicated. But then when I get that number, I then all right, I'm gonna make a video that I can realistically at the end of the video point to it and say, hey, you should watch this, and it would make sense, and that I could put this video in the end card for that video and sort of drive traffic that way and that kind of stuff. I know this is all super noodly, so give me a little bit of stuff. But when I choose what I want to do, if I'm doing a more safe video like that, like a video that is based on a video that's already suggested, and a 2-to-1 ratio, because the one I will either do something that I feel like doing or something that is a bit more experimental, trying to see if something else will resonate with the audience. So, and this is a pretty new policy, so it is what it is. So I do these. So when I go to do a subject that I'm already comfortable with because I've already made a video on it before, typically I think of videos in terms of clusters. I have a book or something I found on a subject that I can break into sections or chapters or something like that that would work well for several videos, and I kind of start with an overall summary, and then if that does well, then I'll go more in depth and go more in detail and show more stories and more examples. So, for example, right now there's a book I'm reading called Bringing the War Home, which is about the rise of the Vietnam experience and the rise of the white power movement, and sort of goes up until the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. And so I've been reading chapters of those. I've been reading that book. And since the first video for that did very, very, very well, I'm going to be making probably a lot more sequels to it over the next few months. And I've got tons of ideas to dig in on that. But basically, I just try to find an anchor book, usually a well-written history book on that subject that is by an academic historian and is well-reviewed and pretty recent. And then I'll read through it to try and see what kind of a story I'm going to be telling, because I always try to think of my making videos in the kind of context of a story. And then I kind of figure out what's the best story. What do I think is going to be the strongest story from this body of work that I can tell the video about, as sort of the first step forward, which, there might be sequels if it works. And that's just involving me at this point. I know this is a really weird way to do it, but I kind of can rely on the fact that I have a really good memory, and it's one of my skills that I can use as a crutch. So what I do is I will I'll read a book, I'll read a chapter of a book, and then I'll let the way that kind of your brain distills important information and things that stick out as interesting, and I'll use that as a way to be this was interesting, and then arguably a smarter person would take a bunch of notes, but what I do typically after I read a chapter and think, oh, I think I'm gonna make it about this, I start reading through the chapter again, and I start thinking, writing down different facts and different things, and I usually then go online and try to find anything that corroborates it or anything like that. The hell is that? Either way, no spamming my chat, please. All right. So, taking notes when using historical sources for scripts is the bum. Yeah, so I will read through it. I'll try to see if I can find some stories. Then I will. So once I have all my notes, which is typically me just writing like facts, quotes, names, dates, locations, things like that. So I know, while I know like the general gist of the story, I know all the details. And then for scripts, I do something very different from other YouTubers in my space. Like I know Matt writes his scripts word for word. He just doesn't do a lot of editing. He kind of like writes a first draft and he sort of like riffs off of the draft. For me, my taking notes is what I did as a kid. Isn't there an app for that now? Well, not really. An app. I mean, you can use an app to write notes. Like Google Keep is a good one, but I write notes in a Google Doc usually. But yeah, I personally don't use like a written script. What I do is I use point form notes. I usually use like show notes or sort of like things to riff off of, because I go off the fact that I've read the material, and then I have like, you know, the facts in front of me just in case like I don't remember something, and generally like what the throughput of the video is going to be, like what the chain of causation is going to be. And I put that into an outline, and the outline sort of follows the like a narrative story arc, you know, like it follows a very nice penis, thank you. Follows a very nice like storyline, you know, 3 acts, trying to make it work into some sort of, you know, something that functions well as a story. And then when that's done, I film off of that. So, you know, I just like, that's generally what I do. The reason I used to write out my scripts, I started around the time of the Emma Goldman video. I think the Emma Goldman video was the first video where I stopped writing the script out word for word, and I started writing the outlines, because I'm not a very good writer in general. I'm a productive writer when I want to be, but I'm not a very good writer. And as like streaming, you probably can tell, and like my wife's told me several times, I'm a much more powerful speaker than I am a writer. And so I'd rather have like notes to work off of, sort of like I'm doing a lecture at university, rather than like a paper that I'm reading. And I find myself much more comfortable in that situation when I know a lot of people aren't, but it works for me. So that's sort of my thing. That's my whole structure, I guess, is how I, you know, decide what I'm going to make my next video about, what I'm going to research, and where it goes. If you want an example of like where things are going right now, the video I made for Bringing the War Home went very well. So I'm making another one, because my video at the end of October was fucking Hindenburg. The Dinesh D'Souza Endgame video fucking tanked. Nobody watched it. This video I made that came out a week ago already has way more views than it has. And the video is like a month old. The Expanse will be canceled after season 6? No, but it's so good. Oh well, I'm gonna have to read the books. I read the first book. I need to read more of the books. Anyways, so that video tanked, the Dinesh D'Souza video, so I need to do 2 more videos to sort of keep... I always think of like a video that does poorly as a step back, but like in a bad way. Not like in the channel title way, but as like a step backwards. And a video that does well as a step forwards, as growing the channel. And so in my mind, I need to be doing 2 videos that push the channel forward before I can think of doing a video that you know, either I know is not going to do well because my audience doesn't like things like videos about WOMs or videos about people of color or all that kind of stuff, or it's something I haven't tried before, and so I don't know how it's going to turn out, so it potentially could turn out poorly. And so before I do an experiment, I'm going to do 2 videos sort of like on the thing. I gotta check this Expanse thing. They're really canceling it. So yeah, I understand that they're kicking off the guy who did all the sexual harassment, which makes makes sense. Making next season the last season is a little sad. It means that it's not really going to be an adaptation of the book series, but in a good way. That also means that I can finish the book series and get some stuff out of it. So I'll take it. All right, Jiffy Chips. Hopefully I answered enough of your question. I don't know if it was like a useful answer to your question, but hopefully it worked. That movie where Tom Cruise plays a guy who tries to assassinate Hitler, I think the movie was called Valkyrie. The real guy, Klaus von Stauffenberg, was incredibly anti-Semitic but believed that his Christian morals still compelled him to oppose the Holocaust. Were there people like that in Nazi Germany, anti-Semitic but still opposed the Holocaust? I mean, there were people like that in Nazi Germany. There were people like that in America. Like, the entire West was basically like that at that point. So, yes. I'm surprised the D'Souza video didn't do well. It was an appreciable work. Yeah. Well, it was a sequel, like a direct sequel. It was a reference to Marvel movies, which, like, you know, I admit it was kind of a silly concept. Yeah, I guess it just didn't appeal to people. Because if you think about it from the title and thumbnail, there was really no idea. There was no telling what the video was about. So, yeah, just didn't do well. It happens. What more hurt with the Dinesh D'Souza video was that the Emma Goldman video also did very poorly, and the combination, the double whammy of two, when I was only making 2 videos a month, doing doing one video a month, and then having 2 months in a row of videos that tank, that it really hurts the channel. And I kind of woke up one day and realized that, like, channel growth had gone way, way, way down at the end of October and into November. And I was like, oh shit, I really got to change things up here. My channel's kind of like teetering at the break of, like, you know, not growing anymore. So I had to change up my content strategy, and so this is what I came up with. So far, it's working. Had a really good feeling about the White Power Movement video, and we'll see what now that I've got my next video coming out tomorrow, I have a pretty good feeling about that one too. And then the Japan video, if I do it okay, I think the video it'll not be like hugely popular with my audience, but I think it'll do okay. I want to pitch a story to Hollywood that we build a second White House behind existing of one and Truman Show Trump for the rest of his life, have voice actors play drunk Putin or horny Pelosi. The fun is endless. Oh boy. I don't know. I suspect you could recut the Dinesh D'Souza video without all the random Marvel stuff. Yeah, I suppose. It's kind of pointless at this point, though. Might as well just move on to new subjects. The video is also kind of an election video, which also, like, yeah. Worrying about channel growth is something I suffer from. Any suggestions? I mean, that's always going to be there if you're a YouTuber. YouTubing is hard. It's arbitrary. You don't know for sure what's going to be successful or what isn't, but that's also true of all art or all, like, media. What I'll say is that staring at the data in like a obsessive way is not going to get you anywhere, and that you should probably only check in like every few weeks and stuff to get a more of a bird's eye view of how things are going, because it's very easy to obsessively check numbers, and that's not going to do you very well. And that if things are not working, shake things up, change stuff, and use your analytics data to drive what is working, or what sort of decisions you make. That's sort of my take on that. Look at my latest video, or latest question. I did a funny. Oh gosh. I don't want to be your best friend anymore. What do you think about that? Thought slime. Oh boy. I don't know if I'm his best friend. We're friends, but like he's got other friends as well. Um, so yeah, so what I would suggest is just don't look at it. Don't look at the channel analytics, and what else can I say? Just think of numbers. Just don't think of things as like failing, or don't think of things as like as like doom and gloom, and always think about like, okay, well, like what can I do to turn things around? What's the data say? And also the golden rule of making content on the internet. And I'm learning that this is true, and it's kind of sucks, but it's kind of great if you can figure it out, which is find something that works. Just keep trying stuff until you find something that works. And then just make, like, then your audience is going to show up and they're expecting exactly that. And aside from, like, once you've kind of stumbled into something that works, keep doing a whole bunch of those. Because there's a lot of people who come that don't want anything except for that. And when you experiment, try to cut it with a good amount of stuff that you know will work, so that your audience doesn't feel like they're showing up and getting something that they didn't expect. Keep in mind, just like with all commercial art, you're a product, or you are a person who is making products, and making videos for an audience is making stuff for an audience is about making them happy, not about making you happy. In my imagination, you, Matt, and Mexi are like each other's only friends. No, we all have our own friends. Honestly, even when I lived in Toronto, I didn't get to see Mexi all that often. We only she and her partner and Kelly and I had a double date like once. And then there was the meetups. Matt and I used to see each other every week with D&D, and we still see each other every week with D&D, but just like everybody's so stressed out and tired at the end of a D&D session that we don't just chill anymore. What's your favorite history topic? I am very interested in my dissertation subject was on the war on terror and 9/11. I find that 9/11 stuff is pretty interesting. Matt from Thoughtslime, yes. So I like 21st century stuff. I am really interested in post-World War II United States, to the point where I could teach a university class on American history. I also am really interested in the kind of early 20th century far left workers movement that doesn't get a whole lot of attention, but sort of like the Gilded Age workers movement, the Wobblies, the IWW, people like Emma Goldman and such. So much that I have I don't know if I can see on the back here, but there you go. There's a print of Emma Goldman right there. Coal Wars, yeah, exactly. Biggest misconception about 9/11 in Afghanistan. That 9/11, if there's anything that we know really well about 9/11, it's that what's it called? It exposed some serious errors in American airspace security. That's a huge thing. They found what's it called? There's some evidence to say that the delayed transition of power to George Bush, brought about by all of the issues with the Florida recounts and stuff like that, might have hurt the George Bush transition team to an extent that they weren't able to properly deal with the Al-Qaeda threat. I think that's more them covering their ass, but that is sort of a thing that is coming up these days. It's a fun thing. But yeah, 9/11 was, a thing. I don't know about a misconception about Afghanistan, except for the fact that you can what's it called? You can play there's so many the fact that Americans don't even have a good conception of Afghanistan. You play Modern Warfare or whatever, and they have a mission in Afghanistan, and the signs are in Arabic, so it just shows just how little they know about how little the actual idea of what Afghans are like is when they go there. I think the Harlan County, USA is still YouTube if you make a vid about coal strikes. Yeah, I definitely think I should. I don't know, because like the thing is, the Leon Shulgosh video did really well, which makes me think that my other presidential assassinations videos might do well. I have to figure out if my Leon Shulgosh video did well because it was about a presidential assassination, or if it did well because it was about an anarchist. And I can probably experiment both ways on that. Why can't Americans separate the idea of democracy from capitalism? It's freaking, what's it called? Propaganda. Americans are some of the most propagandized people on Earth. Cold War propaganda tried to make a connection between democracy and capitalism when really they are complete opposites of each other. What's the safest place in history to be a woman? That's a really fucking good question. My assumption would be now, but I have a feeling that maybe in the 1970s it was a little bit safer. I'm not sure. How did New England Native Americans deal with men who committed sexual assault? I don't know. My guess is that they probably, like fairly often, it was dealt with probably like with kinship group to kinship group, like remediation or something like that. Like there was like a lot of those groups that lived in like New England were very like focused on like more extended family groups, and so if a man committed sexual assault, there would probably be. There wasn't like I don't think there was like a set punishment or anything like that, but they probably would have like tried to work something out between the two families that it happened, and it might result in something like I think exile was a common thing they'd use, or yeah. What would you say is your political philosophy? As a side note, I think assassinating a president gets eyeballs. Yeah. I am an anarcho-communist. I would also call myself a democratic confederalist, which is sort of an idea of not necessarily needing a state, but if government has to exist, to keep it as local and as autonomous and as voluntary as possible. Sort of like what's happening in Rojava. Those are sort of the things that I think are workable political philosophy. And even if I don't get those things right now, helps to me. I think it helps me to be, what's it called? Helps to just always think in a direction of more left wing and more anti-authoritarian, because those are sort of the two trends in our modern political moment that are basically destroying the world. And but we are going further in more and more authoritarianism and more capitalism, and both of those need to be destroyed if we stand a chance of surviving the future. So those are sort of my big things. What's stopping us from meeting each other when we submit questions? Like, what if I put Comrade D-Quack or Thought Slime in the Who Are You box? I mean, I guess you could do that. I don't know what the point would be. Big whoop. Going by the honor system, but also, that is it. All right. Waiting until you understand the viable alternatives to capitalism and how you get there? Well, there's lots of books about those things. Thoughts on the Mike controversy? Apparently a lot of people are mad at Mike from PA for saying class matters more than race. Oh. I don't want to really wade into a drama that I don't know anything about, so I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to answer that. Someone who thinks delegates picked by liquid democracy should run a controlled economy with the aid of computers. What kind of leftist does that make me? Um, Sounds like it makes you like a Marxist-Leninist with like some like, you know, technological tendencies or something. I don't know. Like if you still believe in a state, then that's putting you firmly in like kind of like Marxist territory. The like computer aided economy is sort of, you know, it doesn't really matter what all political ideologies will probably have something like that to some extent if they want to have a functioning economy in our modern day and age. But liquid democracy is just sort of like, you know, democratic socialism, I guess. Known as my masters were anarchists, not mouse. Yeah. Any book recommendations for U.S. national security containment? Like about the containment policy or about just... Like that's a very broad subject. If you're talking about containment, like if you're talking about like Cold War policy specifically, the best book that I would recommend is Cold War strategy. Containment strategy. The best general Cold War book I read earlier this year, it's by Oddar and Westad, and it's I think it's just called The Cold War, but let me find out. You didn't say you wanted a state. You did say you wanted representative democracy rather than democracy, so that's still like not democratic, but I don't particularly care about liquid democracy, but I don't know. It just sounds like what the things you're talking about are not so much declarations of like priority of like what kind of like political values or anything like that. These are just policy proposals. So this liquid democracy running a computerized controlled economy could literally fit into endless leftist tendencies. Goodreads is being slow. I'm trying to find the name of that Cold War book because that was a good book. And it's one I highly recommend for people who are interested in U.S. Sort of like national, like what's it called, national strategy. So Oddar and Westad is a historian of global historian who from Norway, and he does a lot of stuff about like the global Cold War and such. He's a really good author if you're interested in that kind of like national security stuff like that. And his latest book, yeah, here we go, The Cold War: A World History. That's a pretty good if you want to like have like a good like overview of the Cold War. That's a pretty good book. I read it earlier this year and I was pretty happy with it. So if that's what you're into, you'll probably get a lot of juice out of that. And then when you read that, you'll probably get a lot of... you'll actually probably end up getting a lot of topics that you want to branch off into. And it gives you a lot of things to like, oh, let's go read a whole lot of books. Liquid democracy is... I know what liquid democracy is. It's just it's a how, not a what or why, is the thing. Like you could be an anarcho-communist and believe in liquid democracy and computerized controlled economy. You could also be a Marxist-Leninist or a democratic socialist or a social democrat or like it doesn't really like all those leftist tendencies would fit that model. So it has more to do with what your like ideals have to be about things like authoritarianism or things like that, I suppose. It's like an anarcho-communist would be very focused. Oh, let's see. $2. Oh, thank you for the super chat, Frederick. I'm largely interested in the area of détente. Now that's a tough one. That's a tough one to talk about because, and I hate that this is a fact, but there's actually not a whole lot of great history written about the 1970s yet. There should be more, but it's actually like a really glaring hole in like the historiography of American history, is that it seems like people aren't super interested in writing about the 1970s, despite the fact that a lot of interesting stuff happened, especially high end stuff. The best thing I can think of that might be an interesting subject for you if you're interested in that kind of détente period is Nixonland. If you haven't read Nixonland, you'd probably like that. I'm trying to remember who that book's by. Nixonland is a book by Rick Perlstein, who actually just recently wrote Reaganland. That's another one. Anarcho-communist... Okay, oh yeah, so I finished my sentence. Anarcho-communists have more issue with the concept of ownership, have an emphasis on radical anti-authoritarianism and commune-based organization of society, while like a Marxist-Leninist would say that in order to defeat capitalism, you kind of need to make a state that could have an army powerful enough to defeat the capitalist states, so that after capitalism's defeated, then the state can sort of just dissolve into the stateless communist society that Marx wrote about. Social democracy is about trying to make left-wing left-wing improvements to the capitalist system, while a democratic socialist wants to create a socialist society through like voting and activism and things like that. So a lot of like leftist political tendencies had more to do with what role the government plays in day-to-day life, what that looks like, and what the and how you think that the sort of oppressive society we live in needs to be overthrown. You know about the channels Dystopia Now and Afro-Marxist. Dystopia Now makes documentaries about things like right-wing crime, and Afro-Marxist uploads documentaries about black revolutionaries and movements. I knew Afro-Marxist. I don't know Dystopia Now. Should probably take a look. Expansion of the civil rights movement as a consequence of globalization. That is true. The 1970s was also a great moment for the development of feminist movement, like what's it called, like second wave feminism, and like that was the decade where like abortion rights were solidified in Roe v. Wade, and like a lot of women entering the workforce and stuff like that. So Stalin, by abandoning expansion of the revolution as Trotsky wanted, actually made his power unjustified. Kind of. Stalin was sort of like this guy who, like, he's like, he had his own theory about what communism was that was a bit different. He was thinking that, like, the Soviet Union would bring about global communism by building the communist society in one state. So, like, just taking the Soviet Union and industrializing it. And that really, like, because, like, there's this idea that, like, Marxists believe that, like, classical Marxists would say that the revolution can only happen in the most industrial, so, like, the most advanced economy in the world. And Stalin thought that, like, well, if you really want to have, like, all the socialist programs that you want, you need to grow the economy. And so, like, Stalin was very preoccupied with, like, extreme economic growth. Very mismanaged, but sort of his idea. Do you think the lib left should reappropriate patriotism? I would hope not. Patriotism is sort of like toxic material, so I'd be kind of against that. Our tendency is more about getting there than how to run things when we do. I feel like that's part of why I can't pick one. I don't know how to get from here to there. You say there to here. It's been a long road. My time is finally here. See you later, Matt. Leftist tendencies have a whole bunch of theoretical and historical roles to play, and there's as many as there are. Like, there's tons of different leftist tendencies, and they all have different. They're all like matters of different types of political theories, different types of emphasis, different types of focuses, and things like that. So it's a bit more complicated than just like how you want your economy and how you want decisions to be made. My partner will make fun of me for being obsessed with Kissinger. I mean, as somebody who studies the war on terror, I understand being obsessed with somebody who is patently evil. So that makes sense. And also, thank you for the super chat, by the way. All right, do we have another question? I've been talking to some of my liberal / centrist friends about socialism and systemic issues in our societies, capitalism, racism, sexism, queerphobia. And while they are sympathetic to the socialist cause and think that I am correct in those cases, they don't see the solution, anarchist society, anarchist theory, as very realistic, or they see it as too fatalistic. Would you say that they are correct in regard, or just lack the theory to really get invested in stuff? Would it be fair to leave them out of it? I mean, it's always interesting to talk about this stuff with your friends. I don't understand people dismissing ideas as too fatalistic because, like, I'm sorry, your ideas are too based in reality. I can't listen to it. It's like the people who refuse to accept like climate change or refuse to accept that COVID is real because it just makes it so. Hey, Bad Luck Note, thank you for following. Love your channels. Glad to watch the stream. Awesome. Yeah. So it took time to pick up where we were. In my mind, a lot of like libs / centrists have some left-wing beliefs. It's just that they don't think about things systematically. They don't put a lot of thought into how these things are interconnected in a big way. And so, in some ways, you got to have those late night drinking and talking sessions to really dig into like what's the bigger story here. So in my mind, a lot of people, like a lot of the reasons why people become socialists is because they care about, a social justice cause. Like they believe that racism is bad, but then they like read about like, oh, well, where does racism come from? That's a question that I would be really interested to find out what a liberal or a centrist believes. What is the source of racism? Where does it come from? How do you stop it? Things like that. And you could. Do you think the left will ever get along as a whole from recently being called trash by a Marxist for being an anarchist? I think they will if like a suitably large project comes along that they can get attached to. Like nothing put aside different leftist tendencies more than Bernie Sanders. And if there was like some sort of like realistic, if there was like some sort of like, really practically realistic way to push forward left-wing causes, a lot of people will get on board and will push for whatever. I really want to pick the leaders of society by liquid democracy, but I want those societies to be like ancient hunter-gatherer tribes where people come and go, and societies themselves break up and reform over time. Okay, that sounds kind of like communes, except I would argue that the concept of having leaders is sort of the problem there, because you're always going to have a hierarchy in that kind of situation. But almost sounds like anarcho-communism, I guess. I think a lot of anarcho-communists, and then it's like democratic centralism is sort of the idea that maybe different cultures in different places would have different ways of organizing their society, and that sort of like is part of the multiculturalism is part of the ideology, which is something I find very appealing. I answer this question to they're sympathetic, but they don't think that it's like I've had several people have that conversation about like, oh, it's just not realistic. And it's like, okay, I mean, yeah, I mean, if we had like, you know, the 10-point plan about how to make socialism happen, we've already have done it by now. But like, I would prefer something more. I would prefer like, you know, just taking whatever opportunities come across, and also I'm very much a person about dual power and those kinds of things. According to Dan Arrows, a lot of Germans don't want to accept that the regular German army committed atrocities were complicit in the Holocaust. Do you think they'll be more willing to when the war finally passes out of living memory? Could be it, but it does like it's just not realistic. But yeah.
Citation needed.
Like, I don't know. We haven't had that many anarchist societies, but all of the non-anarchist societies have led to a world that's at the brink of collapse. So, you know. According to Dan Arrows, so German. I do think that maybe a little bit of this stuff will happen, a little bit more admitting of the things that happen as the war goes out of living memory. But also, it's kind of important for Germans to, like, this sort of restructuring of the narrative self-concept to say, well, what the Nazis did were bad, but, like, the Germans are not the Nazis. And, like, making that sort of distinction is sort of a big deal for trying to kind of exonerate a lot of German people. And, like, I think that there will always be friction about, like, pointing that out versus, like, what will make people feel comfortable, you know, just existing. The problem is countries in general, but that's a different thing. What do you think Al Gore would have actually done about climate change if he won in 2000? I actually don't know. I don't know how much his, like, you know, talking a big game about climate change was not based on something around the needs of, like, I don't know. Like, I always wonder, like, thing is, like, Al Gore's talked a big game about all the things that he wouldn't do that Bush did if he was president, and all the things that he would do for things. I have a feeling that Al Gore would probably have not done as much for climate change as he likes to think he would, because power tends to not, like, I don't even know what he could have done. He would have had so much political pressure to fight. He might have passed some sort of milquetoast legislation or something. So, you know, there's that. I don't think that Al Gore would have done as much as Al Gore seems to think he would have, though. So you predicted there would be a big culture war over Halloween that didn't really happen, but now we're having one over Thanksgiving. What do you think the difference is? Americans make a way bigger deal about Thanksgiving than they do about Halloween. Halloween is sort of like a second-tier holiday. And it's honestly a holiday that's more important to young people than older people. And so, I guess people weren't, like, ready to go to bat to defend Halloween, but people were ready to go to bat to defend Thanksgiving, so that makes sense. Because, yeah, Americans make even more than Canadians, Americans make a huge deal out of Halloween. Yeah, Southerners are still defending Confederate soldiers like 90 years after the last of them died. Well, not 90. The last Confederate veteran died in, like, the 1950s, I think. Because the last veteran of the Civil War to died in, like, 1952, I think. And he was a Confederate. He was a Confederate veteran. I remember because I think Eisenhower went to his... Eisenhower went to his funeral, and it was like a whole big thing. He got a full, even though they decked him out in Confederate flags and stuff like that, he got a full military funeral. It was like kind of insulting if you think about it. How can we tend not to think of like college professors and doctors as members of the proletariat, even though they're usually either working for salary or commission? Mostly because there's, compared to the amount of people who work like regular blue collar jobs, there's way more people, there's way more sanitation engineers than there are professors in the world. So that's probably why, just the sheer number of them. And plus, they are paid pretty well. They're part of the professional class, just like doctors and lawyers. Was he like a 12-year-old drummer boy or something? I don't actually know. Let me check. Oh, he died in 1958? Holy crap. 1959. He was born in 1854, which would have made him, when the war started, that would have made him 6. Though he claimed he was born in 1842. So he must have been something. The thing is, like, the Confederacy did have child soldiers and stuff like that near the end, too, so I don't think the Confederacy cared all that much about, like, being the right age. Born in Itawamba County, Mississippi, Williams claimed to have served under General John Bell Hood as a forage master in Hood's brigade and Quintel's guerrillas. Since John Selling and other last claimants were dead, Williams was celebrated as the last Confederate veteran when he died in 1959 in Houston, Texas, at the reported age of 117. Dwight Eisenhower, chairman of the Civil War Centennial, said that the death was an occasion for national mourning. However, in 1959, Scripps Howard journalist Lowell Bridwell revealed that he could not find one single scrap of evidence to back up Williams' age or claims of military service, or anyone else for that matter. Moreover, the 1860 census listed Williams as 5 in June of 1860, suggesting that he was born in November of 1854. When he died in December of 1959, according to the New York Times obituary, a newspaper story said a check had failed to find evidence to support the claim. Back in the times when Williams was born, there was a very limited documentation to support birth and death dates. He would have been 8 years old at the time he had joined the Confederate Army, 11 months before the war ended in 1865. He also reported that the National Archives that no Walter G. Williams had served in the Confederate Army from either his home state of Mississippi or from Texas, where his family later settled. So it seems like this is controversial. But also John B. Saling would be the other person who did that, who was born in 1856, who would have been even younger. I don't know. But yeah, the last Confederate veterans all died in the 1950s. Hey, thanks for the super chat, Frederick. Thanks for answering my question. Stay cool. Much appreciated. He might have been bullshitting. Yeah, it does seem like that. Yeah. So someone posted a video compilation of Dave Rubin doing the copium thing on the Discord. If your grift is pretending the right are oppressed, isn't it better to have a Democrat in the White House? Oh yeah, Dave Rubin's going to make a ton of money off of the Biden administration. We'll see. We'll see what the future holds. When I asked you about Hugo Chavez yesterday, one thing I wanted to know if you think there's anything to liberal / centrist accusations of him acting in a dictatorial manner. For the Chavez government, I mean, there was definitely some moves that were definitely like he did a lot of things that would be considered dictatorial to a capitalist. He did stuff like nationalize the oil company, which sounds nice and clean, but actually means taking a company that is like an American company and saying this is ours now. This belongs. This oil company is now run by the government. The government owns it now. So there's that. And so that would be considered like authoritarian, I guess. But like he didn't have like secret police like say like a lot of the dictators that America supported. I don't think he didn't have like purges and things like that. He led a indigenous led political movement. It's just that he redistributed wealth, which the rich people thought was a horrible dictatorship. There's a bit in World War where a Russian character refers to a piano teacher as bourgeoisie, as if the term just means middle class rather than specifically someone who owns capital. I can't tell if that's because your typical 1940s Soviet citizen misunderstood Marxism, or because Harry Turtledove misunderstood Marxism. To some extent, there are people who thought that way. Like the reason why Pol Pot had everybody who wears glasses killed because they were intellectuals sort of speaks to that mentality. It's not a thing. I mean, you even have drama today where like you have people complaining that YouTubers who make too much money on like their YouTube channels are damaging the revolution with their making a middle class income. Pol Pot did that reportedly, and Pol Pot was pretty bad. What can you do when you're a brutal dictator who's being propped up by the United States? When the Soviets taught Marxist theory in their schools, they distorted much. Like, I'd have thought the Russian government would have issues with the parts getting rid of the state and centralized government. Oh yeah, they didn't talk about that part over much. But yeah, they. My guess is that they taught classical Marxism, and that how and Marxist and Leninist thought and things like that. So, who are you? A historical YouTuber? Question: what are your thoughts on the Chicago Boys? I mean, they were the intellectual fathers of neoliberalism and libertarianism, and like kind of like neoclassical economics. So they're the intellectual fathers of probably some of the worst possible things that have ever happened. Since like the 1960s, they're responsible for the horrible economic system we have today that basically destroys everything that it touches. So that's fun. Are there examples of benevolent progressive authoritarians? I mean, I don't notice any. If you know of any, I'd be happy to know. But it seems like people, when they take dictatorial power, usually end up using it to solidify more power, because power is sort of an addiction that makes people less, makes people cruel and unsympathetic. Perón or Allende? I don't know. Allende wasn't really a dictator. He was elected. They taught Marxism-Leninism, but not what we think about. Stalin wrote about Marxism-Leninism and rewrote Lenin's thought. Fun. Mari Sen. Hello, Tristan. I've been binging your videos. Well, that's nice. I'm really interested in a lot of the concepts you talk about, but I don't know where to begin. I don't even know what that means. Like, what like, I would need more specific answers about concepts that you want to hear about. Joseph Tito of Yugoslavia. I mean, I guess if you're not Serbian, you have, there's some ways to be concerned about Tito. Tito was a pretty strong, brutal dictator. Brett, although your Falkland Islands take was not 100% correct. Yeah. I've gotten a lot of shit about that, don't worry. I know that Argentina was a shitty dictatorship. I should have mentioned that just Margaret Thatcher had many, many avenues to settle the Falkland Islands issues diplomatically, but instead decided to do a war to win an election. So, there's that. What are my thoughts on tankies? They're depends upon like what kind. Like there's Marxist-Leninists who are perfectly fine people. I disagree with their takes, but it's fine that they exist. But there's some fucking weird people in the Marxist-Leninist world who get into like genocide denial and just weird making shit up about history and stuff, and it's like, oh, okay, I don't know what the hell this is about. What about Napoleon in terms of benevolent dictators? I mean, if you're German or Italian, I don't imagine you're a big fan of Napoleon. What's an index fund? Oh, you don't know what an index fund is? Okay, this is a fun one. An index fund is it's things like the S&P 500 is probably a good example of an index fund. And what it is it's an investment fund. So it's a stock market thing. Where if you buy money of the S&P 500, you're investing in the S&P 500. And index funds are basically this idea that they are they're stock people, and they buy stock in corporations. Like how do I explain this? Like an index fund will go to the stock exchange and will use its money to buy stock in the 500 best performing stocks in the entire stock market. They'll just buy the top 500 stocks, kind of distributing the money as they evenly as they go, or through some sort of algorithm or something. And then if a stock drops out of the S&P 500, either if it goes down and becomes if the price goes low enough that it is out of the S&P 500, like the top 500 stocks, then they'll sell all the stock of that company, and then whatever gets into it, they'll buy that. And what's happened, and so basically it's just like buying the top 500 stocks and at all times. And the thing though is that because economies tend to grow, the S&P 500 and index funds perform pretty much they either perform on par or better than even the smartest stockbrokers. Because it just uses a simple heuristic of buy the best stocks, dump them when they get too low, and then just keep that kind of thing going. And it does that. It just does that. And all of the kind of Wolf of Wall Street people can't compete with it. And it just shows that hey, you don't even have to listen to market signals. You don't have to analyze stock histories or anything like that. It just goes, oh yeah, and it returns a decent rate of return. So that's sort of that's what an index fund is. And it's sort of showing that the best way to perform even in the most capitalist thing like a stock market is to essentially just everybody puts their money in one pool, and you just do a really simple strategy and nothing else. It's just another example of kind of a hive mind showing that that these things don't really work, or that the idea that the market rewards people who are very smart and wily as opposed to just people who have money is kind of not true. Okay, next we got, can you please describe your thoughts on QAnon as you understand as a conspiracy theory, your views on it as a cult, and if you think it will become more violent as Trump leaves office and the fascist right lashes out during the Biden administration? Well, that's a bunch of questions in one, but I can sort of start chewing on that. But I think I'm going to need to take a washroom break because that's going to require me to do some actual brain work, and if I'm constantly distracted by that, then it's not going to go very well. So I'm going to turn the music up, and I'll be back in just a moment. Hey everybody, I'm back. Let me just get my camera here. All right. So someone was asking about QAnon, and I have been taking quite an interest in QAnon lately. I just been like, listening to all the QAnon podcasts like QAnon Anonymous and Q Clearance and stuff like that. And just sort of like keeping my eyes on what's going on in that kind of world of the far right. I really highly recommend the Dan Olson video, or what's his YouTube channel's name called? Folding Ideas video that came out a month or so ago about it. That was pretty good. Except it says it's about flat Earth, but it's not. But QAnon is sort of a new addition to the meta conspiracy theory, which a lot of conspiracy theorist people have plugged all sorts of other things into. Sort of like the New World Order, Illuminati, that kind of stuff. What has sort of tied into it, though, is a lot of sort of satanic panic era conspiracy theories trying to paint Democrats as basically all of the evil things that people do. So that's a thing. There's sort of this discussion of inversion, which I talked about in my Dungeons and Dragons video. Yeah. So the movement, though, has a lot of like fascist tendencies to it. Explicitly like kind of invoking the Turner Diaries Day of the Rope, where they wait for the day where they're going to be able to execute all of these Democrats who are, who are all satanic pedophiles or whatever the fuck. And so like that, like they have like open fantasies about committing political murder on a large scale, which if there's anything that defines fascism, it's probably something like that. Then, so there's that. And right now, the QAnon movement has been largely shunted off of all major social media platforms. You can't talk about QAnon on Twitter, really. You can't talk about QAnon on YouTube, or at least not as much as YouTube you could. Facebook was like their last holdout, but they don't really exist anymore either. So there's that, which I think is going to start to hurt the movement quite a bit. Being deplatformed off of major social media networks kind of hurts their ability to recruit like random people off the street or off Facebook, random Facebook boomers and stuff like that. Not that it won't happen, but I feel like as Donald Trump leaves office and the pandemic starts to go, like as people are kind of, at some point in the future, we're going to stop being stuck inside all the time. And QAnon continues to be like banned from all of these, these social media platforms, that it's going to become marginalized and it's going to grow into different communities and it's going to start to twist and turn in new directions. And so that it'll have a lot of factions and random shit like that. I do think that there's going to be an increase in right-wing fascist violence, but I don't think that it's going to necessarily be QAnon associated. I don't worry about. I don't have huge worries about QAnon turning violent in the same way that I worry about like the Proud Boys and like the 3%ers and like these kinds of movements doing more violence. As far as like tracing down who, are you Tristan Won't Shut Up over on from over YouTube? Yes, I am. Tristan Won't Shut Up is one of my YouTube channels. Yes. As far as it comes to why Q's like IP can't be found, it has to do with the fact that QAnon is Q is probably the person who owns 8kun, formerly 8chan, which is this guy who lives in Indonesia and won't admit to who he is. And he won't give that information away because 8chan's like, thing is that unless the government like requisitions it in involvement with a crime, they're not going to give away anybody's IP address. And so there you go. That's sort of the main things. It's not that it's done by like some brilliant cyber hacker. It's done by some like weird boomer in Indonesia. Capitalism, socialism, and political ideologies. I mean, all right, yeah, getting people started on what to read. I mean, The Conquest of Bread, to me, is like the best. Conquest of Bread is like the first like political book that I'd recommend anybody. I feel like it covers a lot of like the basic principles of why the state is bad, why capitalism is bad, and sort of things that you need to do to fight it. I mean, Marx's Capital is a bit of a big one. It's very important, but it's also an extraordinarily dense read. And I would rather you read something like by David Harvey or something like that sort of summarizes those books. Besides that, I don't know if I know of any really good like overall history of the left or like catalog of leftist tendencies or anything like that. I don't know if there is one right now. So that's about the most that's where I get started. I'm always pushing the conquest of bread. What is a point of divergence that you want to be explored in alternate history? Ooh. I'll give kind of a jokey answer, and then I'll give kind of a real answer. So, one point of divergence, one that I was joking about recently, was a book just with the title Queen Diana. And it was just sort of like an inverse where Princess Diana became queen, and through like some weird set of events that I don't know anything about, like Queen Elizabeth's been killed and freaking the monarchy is like stronger than ever because freaking Princess Diana is like a relatable celebrity or whatever. I think I made some joke about Princess Diana has Queen Elizabeth II murdered in a car in Paris or something. And I was like, excellent. But the points of divergence that I'd be much more interested in seeing discussed is I'd love to see if more like what would happen if former slaves were given their own state in the United States after the Civil War, or just like if they were given what was referred to as their 40 acres and a mule. Like if it wasn't for the fact that the what's it called? If you didn't have the... You look like my dad. Is it you? Yes, I am your dad. So like if the Civil War had ended and a lot of what's it called? And like the government hadn't made like their deal and still focused on doing Reconstruction and making sure everybody was like that former slaves were given, the reparations that they deserved. I would be very interested in seeing what would have come out of that. Are you the wanking? Oh my. I'm just obsessed with playing with my hair because it's too long. I need a haircut very badly, but COVID is the worst. Do you believe Marx was a rapist? I have never heard anything about that. I don't know why you'd say that, but okay. Well, kid, how's the fam... I don't understand. I'm so confused. Either way, let's just keep moving. But I would like a... what's it called? I would like to see more alternate history points of divergence that are more about something good happening rather than something bad happening. Like, there's so many points of divergence that are like, the people who were really shitty and had terrible ideas, they're the ones who won the war instead of lost it. And I'd prefer some that like explored like, hey, what if like people cared a lot more about racial justice? What if like LBJ did not get unpopular with Vietnam, and so was able to push an even bigger and badder New Deal program that changed a lot of the 1970s politics. Like, these kinds of things would be interesting to explore. How do you make an interesting story out of lots of good stuff happening? Good question. I mean, Star Trek does it. I think he's on Twitch and isn't going to read this. Well, I'm reading it now. Did you hear about how Australian special forces are in deep shit about war crimes in Australia? Yes. I did see that. I haven't read any articles about it, but I have heard that Australian forces were basically just murdering prisoners. And, like, they literally had things where, like, new soldiers to, like, have them kill for the first time were, like, killing Afghan prisoners. And it's, like, super fucked up. And I'm like, I'm hoping that Star Trek... Or, wait, okay, my brain miswired. And I'm hoping that Australia does something about this and that this gets bigger than it is. Because it's right now kind of flying under the radar, which really sucks. Because it's fucking horrifying what they're doing. Star Trek makes stories about bad stuff happening against a background of a world where good stuff happens a lot more than here. Well, I mean, yeah. What are your thoughts on the Nepal Civil War? This is the first time I've heard of the Nepal Civil War, so that's what I think about it. Have you been getting into any new for you areas of history lately that you haven't studied much of before? I mean, yes, I've been doing a lot more research into early 20th century U.S. Political movements. I'm kind of like snaking around the idea of doing like the labor history stuff. That's definitely new ground for me. Weirdly enough, and I've been reading a lot about different Cold War things because I've been writing stuff for the Cold War. I think I'm working on a video now about the Eisenhower administration, which I didn't know a whole lot about. So, what books would you recommend for critiques of capitalism? I mean, there's so many, but the best one is still like I would probably say David Harvey's Introduction to Capital. I think that's what it's called. Marx, A Companion to Marx's Capital by David Harvey. I think that'd probably be the best place for you to start. If you could get her, would you like to get Kate Jacobson from Alberta Advantage on a stream and shit talk Canadian neoliberals together? I mean, that'd be kind of fun, but I also don't know. I've never listened to Alberta Advantage, and on top of that, I'd be outclassed because I actually am I know so embarrassingly little about Canadian politics. I suspect that a lot of people who write alternate history are of the opinion that things have basically turned out okay and don't think the current world is so bad. Well, that's to me sounds like a limit of imagination. Or it sounds to me like a problem of imagination. So there's that. Have you had thoughts on Robert McNamara? I mean, was McNamara the guy who wanted to nuke nuke Korea or something like that? He was like a general, wasn't he? The Secretary of Defense. Okay. For some reason, I thought he was a general. It's either one. Okay, play a major role in escalating the United States involvement in the Vietnam War. I'm thinking of somebody else. I'm thinking of that World War II general who was really who led the Korean War despite never actually going to Korea. He did it all from Japan, and what's it called? Was like really weird, and he like always smoked a corncob pipe. I can't remember his name anymore. He's a World War II American general that everyone thought was really impressive. But he was also kind of a weirdo. Robert McNamara coined the idea of... Douglas MacArthur, that's it. The use of statistics in a war, well then, yeah, that's like the grim mathematics of World War II that resulted in some pretty fucked up decisions, so... Yeah, that's a problem. If good all-purpose robots or AI ever become a thing and the wealthy no longer need workers at all, what do you think would happen? Ooh. That's a good question. I have a feeling that, like... There's a couple things that could happen. First of all, I feel like if, we, tomorrow woke up and found out that, Elon Musk invented all-purpose robots that could basically do any job, that, first of all, they'd probably start off as being very expensive. Very expensive. And then they'd probably just end up, the price point would end up dropping over a period of time, right? And my guess is that the huge amount of unemployment that would be created by that, starting at the top and moving its way down, would probably result in a lot of economic instability, sort of like what's happening, because this is kind of what you're talking about here is an accelerated version of what's actually happening right now. Just that, it would be, I guess, more sudden or something like that. In which case, I think that you'd see a period of some severe economic instability before they, and there'd have to be some sort of major sea change. Because basically, if we have cheap general purpose robots, and we don't need to work anymore. Like, a lot of our assumptions about economics just no longer work, really. How likely do you think is that general AI will evolve semi-autonomously and spread online before we realize it's intelligent? Like, that's what, like, you know, random people write essays about, like futurists and stuff like that. I'd be very curious about what AI researchers actually think about that happening. Because a lot of people who I know who are, like, working with, like, GPT-3 type stuff don't seem to think about AI in that kind of way. Hello, just joined the stream. Well, welcome, Tom Nugget. So I think of things like how there's an article that came out the other day where they're trying to, right now, so there's this like program that looks like it might be something very interesting, which is called GPT-3, which is sort of like a machine learning text generation piece of software that responds to like a learning set and things like that. And it's getting pretty sophisticated. To the point where, like, now they're, like, trying to teach it to play RPGs and stuff like that, which is interesting. I don't know where, like, and some of the things that people, like, some, like, more hyperbolic researchers have said stuff like that it would be kind of hard for, like, that it would be, that it's showing, like, early signs of what consciousness might look like. But, it's still... it's still pretty far away. I don't know if it'll do it on. I don't know if it'll do it online. I don't know how how that kind of thing will work. A lot of like the AI doing something that will like destroy the world is sort of to me like general AI, like AI becoming conscious and wanting to destroy us, or AI becoming conscious without us knowing about it. To me, I think is less likely. I feel like the more likely thing we're going to end up doing with AI that's really going to fuck us over is we're going to program it to have some sort of really dumb task. Like, I have more concerns about the maximized paperclip problem than I do about, like, general AI. Which, like, the maximized paperclip problem is, like, if you design an AI to make paperclips as efficiently as possible and make as many paperclips as possible, that it'll optimize to the point where it'll like convert every atom on Earth into paper clips. Think the rich would just hold up in their big houses and the rest of the world would die or actively kill the lower classes? I don't think so, because the thing about wealth is that it kind of requires like, in order for wealth to even feel like wealth, you have to have, like, there's a relative aspect to it. Like, people who are rich don't just love it because they're rich. They love it because they're richer than other people. And without that comparison, there's no point to their to a lot of what they're doing. So my guess is that it would get complicated. It would get weird and complicated. When it becomes obvious that AI isn't going to destroy the labor market, how will non-leftist politicians justify not abolishing capitalism? Like, what would Joe Biden say? They're probably going to say that, that artificial intelligence getting rid of all of the general labor means that people will just get jobs where they'll just code. They'll just learn how to write codes. And they'll go to school and get specialized training, and we'll take all of those 60-year-old truck drivers and we'll turn them into Silicon Valley startup people. And that's how we're going to solve it. Everyone's just going to learn how to code. There's a lot of times, because like the thing is, like for a lot of people who are part of like the upper class who came from lower classes, like Joe Biden, for example, like education did become a way to sort of create elites. The problem is that we've created too many people who have elite education, but not that many like elite positions of people who have actual power. And so that is a problem. And it creates a lot of people who are, educated and have a lust for power, but there's no power. And that is where things will get real nasty. That's a recipe for political instability right there. some weird Cliometric shit there. What about when we build AIs to code other AIs? I think that they'll live in denial. They'll like the general like line that liberals have always said when automation has taken away jobs is either to say, well, your jobs were not taken away by AI, they were taken away by immigrants, or the other way to go is to say that they were taken away by what's it called? They were taken away by you not being good enough at coding. Like a lot, like they always go default to education, and they always say like, oh, like these automation things are going to create new jobs, and we'll just the market will just adjust, and so they'll be like trusting the market to sort of like adjust and find new places for people to work, when like the market doesn't optimize for jobs at all. It's like not even a thing. But yeah, the thing about the GPT-3 is that it is sort of like starting to learn more general purpose stuff, just communicating through language. I don't know. I get updates on GPT-3, and there's some like real like breakthrough stuff going through with it. So we'll see where that goes. Machine learning is getting very interesting in more recent days. Alrighty. What is this? Oh, this is a Mia Mulder question. Did you hear about Putin's health, that he might be stepping down into Parkinson's? What do you think about it? I did hear about it, and then I heard that the Kremlin denied it, and I don't know where it's gone from there. I have a feeling that, like, you know, we're not going to know whether or not Putin is resigning due to poor health until he does it, because they'll deny it all the way up, because that's just, you know, what they do. That's just life. That's just like they're very secretive government. So the story was fake. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Be really great if Putin resigned. Be pretty fun. You think super intelligent AI will be the last invention by flesh and blood humans? Possibly. I don't know. I don't know how close we are to general AI. To be honest. Let's see what we got next. Why are there so many conservative Canadians which spend 99% of the time in videos talking about America? Because the great Canadian pastime is talking about American politics. It's sort of a thing. Like, I'm not alone in being a Canadian that knows a lot about American politics and doesn't know a whole lot about Canadian politics. That's a lot of Canadians, sadly. Because American politics affects us so much. And the thing about Canadian politics is that it's also very local. Like, Canadian politics, like in Canada, our federal government is much smaller than in America. So the prime minister doesn't have as much of an effect on our day-to-day life as, say, our premier does, which is sort of like the governor, I guess, would be the closest thing. And so many times, like politics is like what's much more important for politics is like provincial stuff. And in which case, you know, that's a limited audience to, like, the size of your province. Like, I don't know if anyone would be interested in me talking about Doug Ford shit. Canada's way more federal than the U.S.? I would push back against that. Canada has an extraordinarily small federal government, and the amount of things that Canada's federal government actually manages is pretty limited. Our provincial governments have, like what's called... America's federal government... manages like Medicare and Medicaid and like a whole bunch of like Social Security and a bunch of big programs that like Canada typically delegates to the provinces. Like, I mean, there's CPP, but like and like highways, but like Justin Trudeau doesn't have much of a say over like my healthcare system. Because my healthcare system is an Ontario healthcare system. Our school curriculum isn't decided by a federal agent. It's decided by, You said the opposite of what you thought. Okay. Yeah, no worries. Maybe it's just that none of your provinces are as shitty as some U.S. states. I mean, that's true. Alberta tries, but, you know. Healthcare is provincial in Quebec, too. Yes, it's all run by provinces. The way that healthcare works in Canada is that we have a constitutional amendment which we have a part of our constitution says that you have to have healthcare. Every Canadian has to have a public healthcare service. And... but like the federal government doesn't make it. The different provinces all have their own healthcare systems, and they all work differently. So like, if you live in Alberta, your healthcare isn't covered by Canada; it's covered by Alberta. Same with like Ontario and Quebec and every other province. It's all localized. Some things are federal, but are like in weird ways. Like the really funny one, if you're Quebecois, Nima. You probably know this one, but like the blood bank in all of Canada, except for Quebec, is run through Blood Services Canada, while Quebec just has Hemo Quebec, and it's just Quebec. That one's a weird one. You're French, but you lived in Quebec. Oh, okay. I lived in Quebec too for 3 years. There are some U.S. states that would instantly turn into fascist theocracies if you left them on their own devices. That's probably that is true. Suppose you could go back in time to 1450 AD and do any anthropological study of any Native American society that exists back then. Which would you pick? Oh, 150% I'd go to Tenochtitlan. 150%. I would want to know what's going on in Tenochtitlan. Where? I lived in Sherbrooke. I did my undergrad in Quebec. Oh no, we got a fascist. Bring back the fash, and then it's a lizard. That's cute. Yeah, I lived in Sherbrooke. Je parle un peu de français, mais j'ai pas de pratique pour 7 ans. Mais non. La dernière fois j'ai parlé français au régulier. It's 23. Comme ça. And also, as you can probably tell, my French grammar is awful, so. That's the Aztec capital. Yes. Yes. Precisely. Tenochtitlan would be definitely the place I'd like to see. Because it was a city that was larger than, like, London at the time. And was a completely indigenous-run city. So I think, yeah, that would definitely be something I'm interested in. All right. That was fun. Coming close to the end of the stream now. I'm just going to look at the chat and see what everyone's doing. Remove Pog. No love for medieval Cordoba. What about medieval Cordoba? On the regular doesn't have a strict... Yeah, I was trying to say regularly, but I don't really know how to conjugate regular to... I don't know how to make adverbs in French at the moment. Will Trump be banned from Twitter when he leaves office? I don't think he'll be banned right away, but he'll say something in the course... Like, after he... there will be a day when he does say something that gets him banned, and it's totally going to result in, like... It's going to be the center of everyone's attention for a few days when that happens. So everyone's going to talk about how funny it is. Yeah, the Tenochtitlan I would love to see. One of the big things I'd love to see is the Templo Mayor, which was the huge pyramid they built that they tore down to build the Cathedral of Mexico. But I would love to see the Templo Mayor at its height. just like everything about that life, like it was sort of like a Venice-like city with like waterways and there's like, you know, poetry, and it had a lot of like kind of like Athenian vibes to it, where they had like an entire class of like religious philosophers and who did like science and stuff. Like, oh, there's so much cool shit going on. Anyways, it is 9 o'clock. It is time for us to call it an evening, and I think we're going to go raid Chelsea Manning. For everybody else, though, I'll be back on Friday for my big birthday stream. So I hope to see a whole bunch of you guys come out and we'll have a really good time. Had they built it yet for 1450? Yes, they had. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Take care. Love yourselves and each other, etc.